how you got started in bulldogs in the first place.
Well, the first one I ever had was as a very young child. My dad brought it home. I think the sheriff took it away from a carnival. They were fighting him.
Yeah?
I don't even know that he was a full-blooded English. He could have been part pit, you know. But he'd fought. He didn't know anything else. But he was a friendly big devil, and he brought him home and he said, you can't get him around the other dogs. My dad had a bird dog kennel, and my uncle had a foxhound kennel, so we had dogs. And I liked, I was a young kid. The dog, he'd follow me when I rode my pony, and some dog run out from a farmhouse, he usually whipped him. So, and having been very long, the neighbors complained a little, and the old man kept saying, "Now you can't take him here and there, he hurts other dogs. Don't let him around the bird dogs." So I went in the house, my mom was baking cookies, and I scooped up a handful, and she said, "Get out there," and I run. And evidently the dog growled at her, I don't know what else, but she jumped up on the couch, and when Dad come home, she was still up there, and he was sitting there looking at her. She wouldn't get down, so they made me get rid of her. He got rid of him. He just took him away. I don't know what they even done with him. I mean, I fussed about it, but it didn't make any difference. He left anyhow. I never had another one until we went to South Bend. My dad had saved one of the Studebakers in World War I, and coal mines went under. There wasn't no work, and he called this guy and he said, "Come up, put you to work."
Well, no, wait, you started out where?
Southern Illinois.
Okay, so
Herrin, Illinois.
Yeah.
Is where my my dad was a coal miner in Herrin, Illinois.
Yeah.
Then we moved. We just went up there South Bend. I don't know what he stayed, 2-3 years. And when things were real, right after the 29-30 break, and I went down and lived with my grandfolks. Folks went up South Bend, and I went up there to go to school. There was an ad in the paper, bulldog for sale, and I'd had $25 or $30, I forget. We went out there, and this lady said, well, she'd take $25 for it. With a female. She must have been about a year old.
Well, now wait, what year was this?
That had to be about 31.
1931, just 60 years ago.
We called her Muggs, and she, good pet, played with all the kids and had a good disposition. And she followed me to school, and a streetcar come along. She didn't get across the slick street and fell down. The streetcar hit her and killed her. So I never had another one then until I came out to Indiana, hauling liquor out there.
Doing what?
Hauling whiskey out there.
Oh yeah.
Bootlegging, and when Jack Edwards was the boy mayor at Marion, Indiana.
Yeah.
And it was a carnival. I had some horses. I rented a barn, and time's kind of tough. You rent the horses out for kids to ride. That's close to Motter Park.
Sure.
And the carnival had a high school horse. That's one that stands, rears, kneels, lays down.
Oh, you mean well trained?
Well, do tricks.
Yeah, okay.
But they'd get the horse out there to do these tricks, a guy on it. And when it doing the tricks, it cried, that drawed a crowd for the carnival. It was a crowd drawer. They didn't charge money for it, but they put on a show with it to get the crowd. And their horse was lame. And they said, "I hear you got a high school horse." And I said, "Yeah, I got a little mare, pretty good." So I had an old Model A, had a Model A 27 Model A coupe, I think, and an old trailer. I put this mare in, drove up to the grounds there, what was Ballard's Field. That's where the carnival was at. Showed this guy what my horse would do. He asked me what I'd have to have for it, and I told him $250 and their horse. That was too much, and so being a horse trader, I get in that trailer, Tony, and she just walked up in there, and I started to shut it, and he said, "No, wait a minute." So we walked up through the midway, in the old Whip ice cream stand, what be like soft ice cream now. They called it custard back then.
Yeah.
And I stopped and bought an ice cream cone. It was about noon, and this bulldog run out from under there, and you could see she had pups, or had recently, and I tried petting her, and she wouldn't let me touch her. So the man on the stand said, "You like them?" Said, "We got 3 over in the trailer, her puppies." I walked over there and looked at them, and I asked this lady what to take for them. She said, "I don't know, well, let me ask my husband." So he said, "Well, I'll sell him that long white one with the red spot on his head for $25. This is in about 1935.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, mister, I got that $20 bill you cashed. You're short an ice cream cone, and I'll give you the 20.
They take you up on your offer?
He thought about it a minute. He said, "All right." So I give him back the $19 and the change he'd give me for the ice cream cone. And put this little red pup, or little white pup with a red dot on it, in my pocket. I went down and started to close my trailer. I was going to leave with my horse, and this guy said, "Well, you got us over a barrel. We got to buy that horse. But we don't want you to take our horse. How much will you take to let us keep him too?" I had $100, so he gave me $350 and I left.
Boy, in 35, that was a pretty good payday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was big.
Yeah.
You know, but a good trained horse like that take you a year and a half to train one. I mean, you know, and not every horse would ever do all them things. So she'd cakewalk. You'd get on her and she'd do about, I'd messed with her for 4 years or something. She'd pretty well trained. And we teased this damn bulldog, a bunch of young boys around the stable, and we had her so mean, she blowing in her face and she'd bite at you. So she got about a year and a half old. It was a colored landscaper in Marion, and he had a big white bulldog, big headed, old pump handle tail, white. He had some red ticks on him. Pretty nice looking animal. I didn't know nothing about him, except I knew I liked the looks of him.
Yeah.
She wasn't a bad bitch, because she was mean. We'd teased her so much you couldn't hardly handle her. I kept her on a chain up in the loft so nobody'd get bit with her. She'd bite you. So she come in the heat. I talked him into letting me breed his dog. And the funny thing was, she had come out of a kennel, her mother out of a kennel in England, in whelp.
Oh, really?
And the Maddoxes at Frankfort, Indiana had bought her in whelp. And they'd sold these people in the carnival the runt puppy when they were in Frankfort.
Yeah.
And they had went back the next year and bred her, which my bitch came out of, to Camel's Cloddy Cloy, which also came out of the Bassford kennel and was bought from Reggie Sparks of Toronto, Canada.
Wow.
And that was Maddox's first champion, Camel's Cloddy Cloy. Well, I bred this dog then and got a litter of 6, 7 puppies. And the old bitch, she'd bite you every time you get close to them for about 3 weeks, and after that she'd kill them if you didn't get them away from her. She was nasty as hell. So we raised them up, and there was one white one like the male, but he had that same long tail, so I liked the tail. And like we used to dock fox terriers, I just cut his tail off, but it kept, put a rubber band around it, and it kept bleeding.
Yeah.
So I took him over to Doc Ferguson and had him take another joint off and sew it. I didn't know you wasn't supposed to dock them, but it didn't show much. The tail tapered good, and it looked like a taper, and it just come off the hump and went down about an inch.
Yeah.
Kind of stubby. It really didn't hurt him that much. I mean, most judges didn't look at it that way. If I'd have knew the standard and things, if I'd have studied, I probably never would have done it. But anyhow, I left him at home and away from the other puppies, and he didn't eat too good. Back in them days, you didn't have commercial dog food. You had to make your own. And he kind of got the rickets like. So when the pups got 7, 8 weeks old, I'd talked to a couple other people, and they said, well, there was a pet store in Chicago that would take them for $25 a piece. So a friend of mine was going to Chicago, and I got Doc Ferguson to give me a health paper, and he said, I'll give you one on that white one, but you can send the other 5. I sold them for $25 a piece to a pet store. I didn't really realize I'd even made a line breeding, but there was a Bob Maddox in Indianapolis, had a big stable, and he called me and he said he had a couple doctors that thought they were big riders, but they couldn't ride for shit, and they wanted a jumper. Well, jumpers are not easy if you're not a good rider. It's a good way to get hurt. He said, now, they just get them, I'll tell them they're heavy hunters, get them a couple pretty good looking horses that can jump, and I don't care how high. So I went to a sale at La Fountain, and there was a team come in with a truck driver. You knew they were jumpers. They had wire cuts all over them. They jumped fences. You couldn't keep them in. These people had sent them to the sale because they had cuts on them. The farmers wouldn't buy them to take them back. Nobody was bidding on them. So I bought the pair, took them over to the barn, healed up their cuts and trimmed their mane, stripped out their tail a little bit, and put a saddle on them. They both would ride. One of them could broad jump pretty good, and the other one was a good high jumper, but the big old horse, the biggest one, he couldn't jump. But they were pretty dapple grays. So I called Maddox and said, hey, I got your hunters. And he come down, and he said, what do you got to have for them? He tried them out. And I said, they ought to be worth $1,500. Oh, bullshit. No, I said, well, now, that's what you're going to get more now. This was a lot of money, so I finally wound up selling them to him for $700.
Yeah.
The pair. Well, I sold him the horses, but while he was there, this bulldog puppy I had kept out of the old bitch I had bought at the carnival, he ran out of the tack room. He was just a big pet. Well, in the meantime, Doc told me he wouldn't give me a health paper on him because he thought he had the rickets when he was a puppy. And he told me to stop at the butcher shop. I don't know whether you can remember the open butcher shops, but they used to hang meat in and had an open shop, sawdust on the floor. And the butcher cut meat and sold it.
I read about them.
So I'd go in and get the big beef bones, take it home and split them with a hatchet, and take a spoon and rake the marrow out of the bone and feed that male. So he got to be about a 75-pound big white.
Oh, so he recovered nicely.
Oh, he was some kind of pup. But the mother was nasty because we teased her, but he was a friendly big devil, loved everybody. So the little kids would come out and pet that dog and play with him. The bigger kids rode a horse. So it paid for my hay burners.
Yeah.
Well, I never thought nothing. He just said, I've got a cousin that's in them things raising them at Frankfurt, which turned out to be the Maddoxes. I didn't know them before, but that's where the mother came from. So anyhow, one Sunday I'm busy, and the guy that worked for me was drunk, and about 10 people there wanted to ride a horse, and I didn't have that many ready. So I had to get them out and brush them a little and put a saddle and bridle on them. And a nice little lady walked in and said, you got bulldogs? And I said, yeah, I got a couple around here. My old bitch upstairs is nasty. Don't go mess with her. She'll bite you. But I got a friendly male running around here. Call him. He'll come out. So she called, and out he come waddling out of the tack room, and they took him outside and looked at him. Pretty soon she come back in and said, you got papers on that dog? And I said, yeah. I had the old kitchen cabinets like your mother and them used to have with a flour sifter and stuff, and I'd made a medicine cabinet out of it in the tack room. I said, they're laying on the I just filled some papers out and sent in for a litter kit. And I said, the pedigrees are laying there. The male's is the top one, and the bottom one's a female. She picked up, why, Paulie, look, she's getting running out of there, Paulie this. I ain't paying attention, I take care of horses. But this is out of fawning. Well, the bitch they had brought over from England, they recognized right away. Well, she could look at the other one. She said, well, where'd you get this Bassiford dog? I said, well, he belongs to a colored man in town. He sold some spruce trees to an English lady. She married her husband in World War I, and they live there in Marion. Her sister was over visiting, and he shipped her a couple of blue